Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Robert.
This is funny. I just had my notes. I'm wondering what I did with them. Okay, we're going to have fun. Our subject today is, I've been looking at the Keep Him in Perfect Peace, whose mind is stayed on Thee, which is one of the more famous books of the Bible, especially for those in the New Thought movement, because it gives us a grounding on how do we create a life that works. Now, I was looking at that and I decided to go over into the Lamsa translation. For those of you who don't know who George Lamsa is, George Lamsa was a man that grew up in a tribe in the hills of Turkey that spoke the original language Aramaic. And so he knew the language that Jesus spoke and was spoken in Israel at the time of the Bible. So he came back and translated the Bible more accurately, in his opinion, in my opinion, of course. And so there's a different context to what he translated and what the normal translation is. And that caught me. Those of you who don't know, we have a background in NLP. NLP is the study of words and language and how it affects the brain. And it also helps, when people do things, why do they do it? So I got looking at the words, the translations, and I'd like to read the translation. I'd like to read the translation from Lamsa to you, keeping in mind that the original translation was, "Thou will keep him in perfect peace." Okay, and the word "him" is key. So here's what it says over in the Lamsa, Isaiah 26:3. "Those thou will keep us." Do you hear the difference? Yeah. "In perfect peace, for in thee we have trusted." Now, whether you know it or not, there's a very subtle difference between those two translations. Anytime you use a word that speaks outside, so him is looking at somebody else. In other words, if I use him, it's somebody out there. Everybody there? And one of the problems that we experience in the world today is the understanding that the kingdom of heaven is within, it's not out there. So our language is even creating this separation that we talk about, and it's happening unconsciously. So in this conversation, the original translation of the Bible occurred back in the 14th, 15th century. And the context was him, outside of me. So if you understand, one of the problems that we experience is, and one of the problems Jesus experienced, he was threatened with blasphemy because he claimed that he was God. And then he turned around and said, "Ye are gods." So the whole idea is we can't be gods. We can't do that. That's an impossible. That's blasphemy. But Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is where? Within. So our very language keeps things separated. So I was really looking at that and studying it. So "thou will keep him in perfect peace" is somebody else. Now, and when we go into us, would you agree that's us?
Yeah.
So the difference here is anytime you use words that separate you, them, they did it to me, okay? And these are the words that victim mentality use. It's always somebody did something to me, okay? So the idea is languaging, really, it's being aware of our language and how we use it and what we do with it. And last week we talked about I am that I am. And so I am that is what we see, what we define, what we smell. So I am that is a inclusive word. In other words, that's me. And that's me from speaking from my entity out into the world. We deal with a lady who uses the term I am as the divine clarification or divine claiming. Anything I put with I am, I'm claiming. Okay, so I am whatever's there. Now, the idea behind this is, in my day-to-day world, how do I live my world? How do I presence my world? And what's happening today, we've got groups of people that get together and they believe this, and then and anybody that doesn't believe it is them. Okay, so if you understand what's happening is, the commandment was, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy mind, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. That's the commandment of Jesus, which he said, I'm changing the old commandments, and I'm bringing these new commandments in. So thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy mind and all thy heart, which is, thou wilt keep him or us in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Which is almost an exact repeat, 1,500 years after it was spoken in Isaiah. Because Isaiah was the great prophet in the Old Testament. And here's the great prophet or teacher bringing the word to us through the entity we call Jesus. And he spoke, these words. So it's a really fascinating conversation. Okay? Now, I've been tying it all together. As you can tell, my mind's been going this week. It really has been. And yesterday, I was watching people come and go here. It was amazing. It really was. And by the way, thank you for all those folks that worked so hard. I was here at, 5:45, and Randy and Tommy were here already working. It's amazing. So thank you. And they also cleaned up afterwards. And of course, Val and others, you guys really did a heck of a job. You really did. And what they did was they created an energy. And that's what I want to talk about. Again, back to this conversation here. Okay, because I want to repeat this. There's a big difference between the two translations. And the translation from Lamsa is, thou will keep us in perfect peace. So that's us. And who is us? Humanity. Us. All of us that think alike. Now, I'm adding that last phrase because does everybody think alike? No. Thank God. But you see, the idea is, as a group, we can get together and change things. Okay? So, thou will keep us in perfect peace. What's perfect peace? Now, see, that's an imaginary thing. And when I say that, it's like, that's somebody else. I could never know that. Did you ever have a point where your mind stops and you're looking for something to do? That might be perfect peace, but we're not used to it, so we don't know. Okay. And that will keep him in perfect peace, for it is thee we have trusted. So it's very clearly saying it's God we have trusted. It is something, an energy for good in the universe, if I can use that terminology. And it goes, O Lord, forever and ever. For the Lord God is an everlasting strength. So the promise is it's there forever and ever and ever. Now we're starting to talk about the universal powers, universal energies, if you will. There's also well known the law of attraction, that whatever you think about, you create. And you see how language traps us. So it's being careful of our languaging and what we're saying. I hear people complain. Anybody familiar with complaining?
Yes.
And if you stop to think about it, I want you to become aware of your words. Because what happens is people will say, well, I even hate to go here, but I am not feeling well today. Or I am sick. Or there's all these negative conversations that begin with I am, and I am that, what am I creating? And see what is being said here by the prophet Isaiah and by Jesus later is that dwelling on the idea of God is the key to being peaceful. It's interesting because Charles Fillmore, and we're working on prosperity, by the way. Did you know it's a divine right to be prosperous? But we Austins have to be thinking that way. So anyway, this is Charles. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
I want to add up to this. We know through the law of attraction that your thoughts attract things. Okay? And in the universe, everything is energy. Everything is we know everything. I mean, this stand is made up of molecules at a high rate of vibration. So everything is energy. And everything that's energy has a vibration to it. And our thoughts attract energies. Everybody there? Now, and that's a law. That's a law of the universe, which, by the way, quantum physics kind of works with. But the idea behind that is, what words are you using and what are you attracting into your life? Basic metaphysical conversation. And in our day-to-day conversation, we forget that those words have power. That's why I suddenly realized that a simple translation between him outside and us, we inside, is a huge impact. And the victim conversation is blaming other people for my circumstances, when we know that my thoughts attract and my conscious, I live in my consciousness. I live in the consciousness that everything around me is my thoughts projected into my world. It's almost like a movie projector grinding out my beliefs. So we know that. So in that conversation, what am I saying? What are my words? Am I attracting the darker energies of the world or universe, or am I attracting the more positive energies of the world? The spiritual energies which we know are there. And, you know, it's always we want to blame somebody else. I've had a number of people talking to me about control. They don't feel they have control. Anybody familiar with that conversation? It's like life's out of control. I hear that a lot. And that's what's happening outside right now. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of upset. There's a lot of political strife. There's a lot of strife everywhere. And what is creating that? It's the darker energies that are creating those incidents. And you see, here's the key. If my thinking is in that energy phase, I'm part of that conversation. I might even be adding to that energy. So the idea behind it is, I am an individual, and I am here as a child of God creating my world. And you know what else? We influence those around us. Okay? So it's a simple energy function. And am I in the energy of God or am I in the energy of the ego? Is a basic conversation. So Charles Fillmore says, you ready for this? Yes. This is a little deep. You can do anything with the thoughts of your mind. Well, the world goes, no, I can't stop thinking. Okay? Then he goes on and says, they are yours and under your control. Now, what's interesting is we've been trained to believe that it's somebody else doing things to me. Okay? Or it's him, not me. So the idea behind that is, I've given up control automatically of my life because I'm saying I don't have any control over my thoughts. Then he goes on and says, you can direct them, coerce them, hush them, or crush them if you choose to. Okay? Then he goes on and says, you can dissolve one thought and put another thought in its stead. So you can change your thoughts. I want everybody to think of a pink elephant. Big pink elephant. Everybody got it? Okay, stop thinking about a pink elephant.
Good luck.
Okay, now change the elephant's picture to gray, regular elephant. See, that's changing, or that's putting something else, another thought in your mind. In other words, when I'm watching TV, which I do, I admit, and I get caught on something that happened, I can choose to not go there, I can choose to change my thought. So that's what he is saying here. Then he goes on and says, there's more to it. There is no other place in the universe where you are the absolute master. And it goes back to the quote from a famous poet, I'm master of my fate, captain of my soul. Through my thinking and through the words that I use. So this morning, what happened to me is I really am so clear that language makes a huge difference subconsciously, even where I presence myself. And so when I'm talking about they or them, or I'm talking about you, or I'm talking about him, or her, or she did this, he did that, it's all outside of me, rather than understanding everything's inside of me, and all I did was create a her to come in and do this to me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's so alien in our thinking sometimes, because it's always out there rather than in here. He goes on, Okay, the dominion given you as your divine right is over your own thoughts only. And you remember in Genesis, man is given dominion over everything. So what is the dominion? Dominion's in our thinking and what we're thinking. Okay, and it says over here in Isaiah 26:3, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed where? On God, or on good, or on the universal love. And love's the energy of God. So there's a simple, really, really simple process that's all laid out for us, and we make it all complicated. Anybody familiar with complications? I mean, I'm in the middle of a book, and it's a philosophical book about the Essenes and this and that, and he's doing all kinds of history, and this Bible verse says this, and this says that, and it's all analytical stuff. And do you understand that we don't need to analyze it? All we need to do is get a hold of this thinking, and from love, change the thought. It's that simple, but the ego mind wants to analyze and keep things so complicated. And the truth is, you're a community of love. You really are, all of us. I watched it yesterday. Folks were coming in. There were some folks that they were excited going through the clothes because they couldn't find clothes anywhere else. So they could come in and purchase clothing for their kids. Anybody seen the kids running around? Oh, yeah. And there was also a table with all the toys on it. And I loved watching the kids come in and pick up a toy. And some of them wouldn't let go of that toy once they had it. Yeah, oh, it was really wild. But see, that's the love. There was a connection that occurred, and that occurred through you giving of those gifts that you gave, and they went out into the universe to serve others. So that's really, if you stop and think about it, getting clearer and clearer and clearer. We're here to serve others, but it's our thinking that affects others. So, and I really struggle with this idea that when I see a homeless person, and I see them as homeless, my thinking is seeing something that isn't true. Because they're a child of God, they have the ability to change their thinking. And so when I see them downtrodden, I'm actually holding them in that state of being. So it's a really difficult thing to struggle. And honestly, I do work with that, I really do. And I just drop these ideas because there's a spiritual side of life, and then there's a physical side of life. And we really are working on a spiritual track. And the spiritual track is meditation time, time in the spirit, reading, whatever you will. You might even read the Bible. It has some interesting words in it. Again, Charles Fillmore's work, and there's a lot of good work out there. The book that Barbara House brought in, it's an excellent book. He's got a good story, by the way. A lot of the book is his story overcoming his medical issues, because he really had a problem. But what he did was, after he went through that healing, then he started teaching his healing. So that's the benefit to that book. Okay, did I synopsize that?
You did. You're good.
So, the whole idea behind everything is, whatever you think about, you create. And I'm going to say it again once more. I'm going to put my glasses on, make sure I read it properly, okay? Isaiah 26:3. Thou wilt keep us. I want everybody to say us. Us. Thou wilt keep us in what? Perfect peace. Okay. Perfect peace, for it is thee we have trusted. So, who have we trusted? God. And can I say that with every event I have, with every thought I have, with every judgment I make? Do I have that thought when it comes time to pay the mortgage, the rent? Do I have that belief when it comes time to go pay for the car? Do I have that belief when I think about the property down there and the building that's already on that property? Do I have trust that I'm okay? Do I have trust that I'm healing? That will keep him in perfect peace. Keep us in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on me. So it's really a belief in who I am, what I am, and who I have behind me. There's a universal energy for good in the universe, And we can tap into it, you can tap into it, we can tap into it in our thinking mode, which is simple basics. So I love you, I appreciate you, and I know that building's being built. Thank you, I'm sorry.